how Dr. Quiet can help you heal your gut. So I'm using this metaphor of the X-ray to show the idea that a lot of healing processes require looking beneath the surface, not just looking at what's presented to us. And for me, that is a CHEK principle, looking beneath the surface. What's behind the story of the story? What's the deeper level of what's going on? And when it comes to healing the gut, a lot of the focus tends to be on the gut itself. Eating more broth, getting glutamine, probiotics, prebiotics, etc. One thing that I see is missed is thinking about the gut-brain connection and how the gut itself is literally directly connected to the brain through the vagus nerve. And if you think about that, for me, I tend to think of the brain and the gut literally as one system. There is no separation for me. So to heal the gut, you may actually also have to heal the brain. And that's where Dr. Quiet comes in. Once the gut has some level of inflammation going on and potentially gut permeability, you'll have inflammatory cytokines, which will eventually get into general circulation. Once you have an inflammatory process going on throughout the body, the other barriers, protective mechanisms of the body will start to be broken down as well. So the protective mechanisms around the lung and the blood-brain barrier. Once you have the blood-brain barrier broken down or becoming leaky, you'll actually start to get inflammatory cytokines in the brain as well. This leads to brain inflammation. So not only will you have gut inflammation, you'll also have brain inflammation, which is fascinating to think about. When you think about how much attention is based on healing the gut itself, but in my experience, not a whole lot of attention is based on healing the brain. And that's where the CHEK approach kind of encompasses all of it. Because if you're addressing your client's overall physiological load, what you're essentially doing is reducing the amount of total stress that's showing up. So you're reducing the amount of stress on the HPA axis. You're increasing insulin sensitivity. You're increasing leptin sensitivity. You're increasing thyroid hormone sensitivity. You're increasing cortisol sensitivity, which can be anti-inflammatory. You're also increasing the body's ability to heal itself, not just from a healing the gut perspective, but also from healing the brain. And how specifically Dr. Quiet comes into this is doing things like meditation, working in, zone exercises, Tai Chi, Qigong, some yoga practices, getting into nature, walking around and touching nature, breathing, slow diaphragmatic breathing. What you're essentially doing at a physiological level is you're flooding the system with oxygen. You're flooding the system with chi or prana. You're helping to reduce the stress load on the body. Oxygen has been shown to be an antagonist to adrenaline. Do you remember when you were a kid and you were really wired or sad or mad or something, and your teacher or your mom would say, just take 10 deep breaths? What you're doing is you're flooding the system with oxygen. And that's allowing a reduction in stress. And that's upregulating your body's ability to be sensitive to all of these mechanisms that have been turned down or toned off due to chronic stress responses. So to get a full healing out of the gut, in my experience, you also have to heal the brain and reduce inflammation in the brain. Now, there's supplements and other things that can help with that. But again, from a CHEK perspective, those things are excellent adjunct helpers. But to really get to the root, we have to start to learn how to manage our stress, learn how to cut time out of our daily lives to respect and honor ourselves in a new way. Dr. Quiet literally helps to heal the gut-brain axis. It's, in my experience, it's very easy for people to make adjustments to their workout program. It's very easy for people to start drinking more water. It's very easy for people to be dependent or just use supplements and think that supplements are going to fix everything. It's very hard, in my experience, to move Dr. Quiet into our lives because from a socio-cultural perspective, we haven't been taught that to take time out or to not do is something to be celebrated. In my experience, we've been taught that the more you do, the harder you work, the more you push yourself, the less sleep that you get. It's almost like a badge of honor for a lot of society, how hard they work and how hard they push themselves. I would imagine that some people actually feel guilty about taking time out to honor themselves. And that's where the gut-brain axis and Dr. Quiet get even deeper for me, is looking at the subtleties of, wow, what part of you feels like you're not worthy of honoring yourself? What part of you feels guilty about taking time out and taking care of yourself to heal? Where does that story come from? What meme is that? Is that your parents' values? Is that a value you learned somewhere else in your life that actually isn't even yours? You've just been subscribing to it for years and years and years unknowingly. And that's where Dr. Quiet, for me, starts to get really deep into not only healing the gut-brain axis, but helping to heal the individual themselves, the physical body, the emotional body, the mental body, the spiritual body, the intuitive body. Dr. Quiet, at a physiological level, heals these mechanisms. At a deeper level than physiology, at a more subtle level, it helps to heal the mechanisms that manifest the physical mechanisms that show up in our body. In my experience, the body that you're sitting in is literally just a biofeedback mechanism for your consciousness. Dr. Quiet can address those things, and from a meditative standpoint or zone exercise standpoint or qigong standpoint or even mindful stretching standpoint, what you can do with those practices is do them in a meditative state. Pay attention to what comes up when you're stretching. Pay attention to what comes up when you're meditating. Pay attention to what comes up when you're doing zone exercises. What is the body's and your consciousness innate wisdom sharing with you that are underlying stories that are showing up as gut inflammation, that are showing up as brain inflammation, that are showing up as a hurt shoulder? Dr. Quiet will help you find the underlying stories for yourself. And if you guide your clients to start paying attention to the underlying stories of themselves, they'll start to gain powerful tools for healing themselves, for coaching themselves. Lastly, I'd just like to share with you guys one more thing.